Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Andrea Piero, Director of the Visiting Artists Program at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I'm so thrilled to welcome you to this evening's presentation by visiting artist Caroline Bergvall. For 150 years, SAC has been a leader in educating the world's most influential artists, designers, and scholars. Throughout its history, SAC has redefined the cultural landscape and influenced contemporary art and design throughout the world. It is our honor to have Caroline Bergvall visit SAC and to have her contribute to our rich history of visiting artists who have spoken at the school. I would like to thank Caroline for sharing her work with us this evening, as well as for the time she has taken to be at SAC for a variety of engagements. I would also like to thank Michael Hsu from the Gray Center for Arts and Inquiry at the University of Chicago for his help with Caroline's visit, as well as our funders, the Illinois Arts Council Agency and the National Endowment for the Arts. Caroline currently has work on view in a group exhibition titled Retrograde at the Logan Center at the University of Chicago. This exhibition explores contemporary artists' recuperation and appropriation of avant-garde strategies, histories, and archives in their work. The exhibition is on view through January 1st, so I hope you'll have an opportunity to go and see it, especially after hearing her speak tonight. This evening's program concludes our fall season, and I would like to thank everybody who has been involved to help make our programs possible. Our spring schedule will be announced next month, so please keep an eye out for that. At the end of the presentation this evening, we'll take some questions from the audience. Please raise your hands so our staff can get a microphone to you. And thank you again for joining us this evening. And now I'd like to welcome to the podium Judd Morrissey, Assistant Professor and Graduate Program Coordinator in SAC's Department of Art and Technology Studies, to introduce Caroline Bergvall. Thank you.
When the shaking starts, what's a safe place? What's a safe place? I begin with 3 lines extracted from Caroline Bergvall's Drift, a project exploring the trope of the seafarer by navigating, probing, and channeling the depths of historical English language. I hesitate to read even this short sequence aloud, misdirecting what arises through Caroline's voice, in this case on the page, as a way to articulate a tremor running through my own and other bodies in response to the fear of exclusionary and regressive notions of territory. In Bergvall's polylingual and multimodal works, the body, comprised of migrating flesh and language, is a diverse and potently tenuous place. She occupies its borders, excavates its soil, seeks at the margins for what is endangered, emerging, displaced, stranded, stuttering. This fragment from Bergvall's work, Cropper, invokes the body as a question formed by language and migration. How does one keep one's body as one's own? What does this mean but the relative safety of boundaries? Could I make sure that what I called my body would remain in the transit from other languages? That it would hold its progression into English? And because I didn't know and wasn't sure, and since for a great number of people, for an overwhelming number of persons, for an overwhelmingly large number of persons, for an always growing number of persons, this is far from self-evident, this is not self-evident, this is impossible, this does not apply, this doesn't even begin to figure, I never knew for sure. Caroline Bergvall's work occupies, traverses, and transgresses the histories, politics, and poetics of complex linguistic territories in oscillations of xenoglossia. She crosses mediums combining poetry, performance, vocal performance, translation, visualization, and installation. A single project generates diverse outputs that map and break the map of known territories of contemporary practice. Her ampersands and hyphens construct a breathing body space of alternating stability and disruption, where to again be interrupted by and to misdirect drift, in this case from the printed page, but soon embodied by Caroline. Here is okay. Mind, home embodies okay. Walk inside your own walk. Sit inside your own seat. Talk within your own voice. Spread within your own shape. Language started shaking. Okay, the day started shaking. Okay, words are a matter of shaking. Caroline Bergvall is an artist, writer, and performer who works across platforms, art forms, media, and languages. The recipient of many awards and commissions, her work frequently develops through exploring material traces, literary documents and linguistic detail, language and literary history, sites and histories, hidden or forgotten knowledges. Her sparse textual, spatial, and audio works often expose hidden or difficult historical political events. A strong exponent of writing-reading methods adapted to contemporary audiovisual and contextual situations, fugitive and mobile contemporaneity, as well as multilingual identities, her projects alternate between books and printed matter, audio pieces, collaborative performances, and site-specific installations. She is based in London and Geneva. Her most recent large-scale project, Drift, 2013 to 2015, has taken multiple forms in a range of environments, countries, and art forms. It explores narratives and mappings of travel, migrancy and disappearance, specifically Old Nordic maritime navigation, the politics and horrors of contemporary sea migrancy, Anglo-Saxon sea poetry, being lost at sea in literal and allegorical ways through contemporary, historical, and archaeological means. Bergvall has a new audio work, Together, Keeping It, Losing It, Doing It, a voice work in 3 parts commissioned by Swiss Radio RTS2 and MAMCO Museum of Contemporary Art, Geneva. Other projects and available publications include Metal English from Nightboat Books, Middling English, and Ghost Pieces 5 language-based installations. She will also talk about her latest work in progress, Ragadan. She has had various solo and group shows, including at the Whitney Biennial, Foundation Vuitton, Tate Modern, Koj Art Center, New Delhi, MCA in Denver, the Power Plant Gallery in Toronto, the Hammer Museum, MoMA, and countless other venues in Geneva, Oslo, Sweden, LA, Marseille, and elsewhere. It is my pleasure and a great honor to welcome Caroline Bergvall. I can think of no writer more pertinent to our experiments here at SAIC.
Thank you for this beautiful, beautiful introduction. It's a great privilege for me to be presenting my work here. In fact, yes, I do feel a complicity of purpose, both in training and in arts practices that you have here. I used to run a writing course called performance writing, and some of you would be coming from that, and others have been performing there, and there was definitely a sense of similar types of thinking about pedagogy in relation to arts practices and the role of interdisciplinarity. So thank you for inviting me. So this is my response to what we're going through at the moment. My, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Oh my, 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 oh my. Oh, my darlings. Oh, my comrades. Oh, my bodies. Oh, my departed. Oh, my teachers, oh, my illuminators, oh, my, for the mostest of the stillest, varmeste, strongest, nydeligste. We are here now for the klarest of the darkest, loneliest of the loveliest, in the mørkest. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. The Caribbean thinker Edouard Glissant talks about languages, not language. His notions of poetics of relation, one could call it interrelation. There's a resistance to bilingualism in European countries and here in North America. It's not tied to the doing it badly at school, as it's claimed. It's tied to political control through the belonging to one language. It's tied to historical decisions to have one language define one territory. This sets up clear, multiple possibilities of exclusion along lines of linguistic fluency as a sign of national belonging. Therefore, questions of dialects, of regional accents, of class, of speech impediments are immediately pitted against this one dominant language. In such a scenario, legitimacy starts with monolingualism, with speaking one language. So it's important to recognize the undermining of languages, and therefore speakers of languages that take place within social and political structures of national identity. Everything else is a threat. Look at the aggressivity displayed towards Spanish as a second official US language. Having an accent, having had a stroke, these are factors that exclude one from fluency within the national bounds. What Glissant reminds us of, he reminds us of the value and the necessary recognition of the cohabitation and coextension of languages. How he so radically wants us to imagine the culture of the Caribbeans as a sign of a hopeful future, from the devastations of the most violent past of the Middle Passage and its slavery, and the environmental present of hurricanes. It has a rich, conscious, self-aware, mixed linguistic culture. He also sees in the valuing of new forms of orality, a way by which we can listen to the languages of the world. This becomes also, it seems to me, the role of the contemporary writer, to create forms of intersubjectivity. Other performances of language can be activated through oral modes. The loosening of the stranglehold of the doer oral writing can instead create terms of contact that are receptive to the confusions and revelations of embodied realities and perception, and can assist in the development of a listening intelligence that Irigaray calls intersubjective. Ways of telling stories that the book could not accommodate can flourish. Ways of interacting with memory can function in space and time and can be accommodated in view to exploring symbolic transactions that dramatize new forms of social interaction. I'm going to continue on from the piece that Judd had started on. In fact, I think we can put up a slide. And the next slide. This is, if you like, the reverse of this piece on the installation, the text on one side of the wall, the pattern of the removed lettering on the other side of the wall. And the next slide, please. Som never had a body to call their own before it was taken away. Som aldri hadde en kropp de kunne kalle sin egen før den ble revet bort, så dont le corps d'emblée leur est arraché. Some never had a chance to feel a body as their own before it was taken away. Som aldri fikk oppleve en kropp som sin egen før den ble revet bort, så dont le corps d'emblée leur est arraché. Some never had a chance to know their body before it was taken away. Som aldri fikk kjenne sin kropp før den ble revet bort, så dont le corps méconnu d'être arraché. Some were never free to speak their body before it was taken up and taken away. Som var aldri fri til å si sin kropp før den ble løftet bort og revet opp, så dont le corps leur est arraché. Some tried their body on to pleasure in it before it was taken up, beaten, violated, taken away. Som tok sin kropp på for å nyte den, for den ble loftet opp, slått, krenket, revet bort. Som satt au corps chopé, violé, arraché. Some had their body for a time, then it too was taken away, or parts of it. Som hadde sin kropp i en tid, så ble den også revet bort, eller deler av den. Som ceux dont le corps n'est plus signalé comme l'un des leurs. Some thought they had their body safely, then were asked to leave it behind the door, or parts of it. Som trodde at de trygt hadde sin kropp, bare for å bli bedt om å la den bli igjen bak døren, eller deler av den, ceux dont le corps emporté au loin des leurs. Some hoped they had one safely, only to find it had to be left across the border, or parts of it. Som håpet de trygt hadde en kropp, bare for å innse at den måtte bli igjen over grensen, eller deler av den. Ceux dont le corps à la frontière, nié, n'est pas des leurs. Some wanted to leave their body behind and couldn't. Som ønsket å legge sin kropp bak seg og kunne ikke, ceux qui ne pouvaient pas. Some could neither take it with them nor leave it behind. Some kunne hverken ta den med seg eller legge den igjen. S'y prendre, s'y laisser. Some bodies are forgotten in the language compounds. Some immense pressure is applied onto the forgetting of the ecosystem some escape from. Some bodies like languages simply disappear. Noen kropper liksom språk blir simpelthen borte, disparaissent, comme les langues. Some or many are being disappeared. Noen eller mange er blitt borte, ont été disparus. Some or many disappear. Noen eller mange blir borte, sont nombreux disparaître. Some or many that disappeared arise in some or many of us. Noen eller mange som ble borte, reiser seg. Noen eller mange av oss disparaissent, se lèvent en certains de nous. Some arise in some or many of us. Noen reiser seg i noen eller mange av oss, se lèvent en nombre de nous. Some that arise in some of us, arise in many of us. Noen som reiser seg i noen av oss, reiser seg i mange av oss, qui se levant en nous, se relèvent en nombre de nous. Some that arise in some of us, arrive in each of us. Noen som reiser seg i noen av oss, kommer frem i hver av oss, qui se levant en nous, se relève de chacun de nous. For a while, I was working with a concept. I've been working with different types of concepts to try and, understand as a shorthand ways of working, or the ways that I'm working with language and the politics of bilingualism, multilingualism that I use in my work. Because I use it linguistically as a source of discourse and as an exploration, but I also use it in the fact that I am also setting up a lot of performances, working with collaborations, and thinking of these as different aspects of entering or manipulating the materials of language. And one of the things that I was working with was from an interview that Spivak did with Gayatri Spivak, the semiotician and philosopher, did with Beckett, in which they were talking, and then they started talking about having a cat in the throat. And that sort of led me on to be thinking about the cat in the throat, to find ways by which we can somatize, embody issues to do with the politics of bilingualism, whether or not we speak different languages, if you like, whether or not we speak different national languages. So I just wanted to read a couple of sections from this. In French, to clear one's throat is to have a cat in the throat, avoir un chat dans la gorge. One needs to spit out a cat to clear one's throat. Literally, un crachat is a spittle. One can also clear one's throat and realize that one has spat out French slang, une chatte, a pussy. This adds and maintains a crucial libidinal and erotic bond with one's pussycat. As I become aware that I'm trying to speak, my body morphs, my cat appears. Cat is the tone in my speech, its accentedness, its orthography. Cat is my speech's subjective accent, the intonation of my verbal patterns, the stutter of my silencings, and all-round explicit accentedness. So what if I were to decide to speak with a cat in the throat? English speakers don't so much struggle with cats as with frogs. It's a croaking frog that one needs to spit out in English. Given the dubious and long-standing historical traffic of jokes and insults between the French, frog, and the English, roast beef, and bearing in mind the old wars of invasion and occupation between the two countries, one could speculate that having a frog in the throat resonates more with military and political history and the known influence of French on the development of English vocabulary than with strictly contemporary matters. Not so if one believes John Ashbery's line, "I hear the toad crooning." As many of us are finding ourselves with much increased frequency, living in countries in which we were not born, or where we are first or second generation citizens, or long-standing residents, or new arrivants, there's an interrupted experience of the past and of the living locale, whether we do or don't experience ourselves as diasporic. Whoever needs to create an allegiance or a correspondence, sometimes seemingly from scratch or from access points hidden from view, to a mixed cultural background, to a complex living jigsaw of multiple markers and untranslated or untranslatable biographical circumstance, will also often question what linguistic belonging means, what fluency entails, what it sacrifices. To seek this out in the fullness of language, in the connective, lubricated tissues of language and around language, is to speak and work with a cat in the throat. Let me see. I think, oh yeah. I'm going to be talking about two main projects that have been occupying my time and everything else for the last few years. The first one that I'm going to be talking about is a project that Judd was just describing a little bit, called Drift. So this is an opportunity for me to be able to show you some of the materials and perhaps some of the methods that I used to get to this performance or this work. It started from very small. I always start from small. And if there's one thing worth mentioning from me today, start small, insist, follow it until it opens. Because I work with language, alphabetic language, as a starting point, I'm aware first and foremost of permutations. I'm aware first and foremost of cohabitation. There's one sign, there's one sign, there's one sign to make a word or a space or a gap. and of the arbitrariness of the connection between sound and meaning in a word. Sky is the word, not the sky. Now, this distance is salutary. This is a freeing parameter from which to work. It means that language is a material, not just an infoband of content circulation for the imprisonment of identities and ill-informed opinions. It releases its darker uses and the prejudice it contains. Language is therefore kept proactively available to be played with, to be taken apart, to be rebuilt and thought. So one could say as a shorthand that the creation of identity in language is always a piecemeal, always made of permutational traffic, always a jigsaw of signs made to become significant. They become performative. They become active on us. We act with them. This is particularly significant to remember in case of prejudicial, essentialized identities, where it can become important to mark oneself out. But it always is a jigsaw of permutational signs and letters, and by extension of histories and influences. Every letter has a history. Letters disappear, and we are all implicated or interconnected with this. Both painful and liberatory, both isolating and open to new formations, and an awareness of subjectivity, primarily an awareness of intersubjectivity, an awareness of intersubjectivity, an awareness of the permutational root of language, which shows up the collage of identities, the interconnections of politics. This is one way to see through hate speech. But of course, language can be fixed. It can become an infoban. And like everything else, one has to train its heat, its flexibility. One has to remember its permutational quality, its cohabitations of sign after sign after sign. Working as a writer in interdisciplinary and collaborative fashions, what I have in the past called hyphenated practice, is reflective of my interest in multiple languages, the power relation between languages, and in thinking about language across modes of literacy and experientiality. So beyond literature, the question of literacy. A lot of my recent work is engaged in thinking about how languages cohabit but also survive, are prohibited, become dominant, infiltrate, not only on a syntagmatic axis in geopolitical proximities, but also paradigmatically by virtue of deep vertical drops into etymologies, syntactical developments, other transformative surges of change within a language's history. This crossing into a range of language soils by way of artistic processes is a way of pushing at questions of power and translatability, of voicing and ghosting, of being and remembering, of empathizing and stripping bare. Working with musicians, visual artists, programmers on various of my pieces have always pressed at my own methods, and they provide responses which writing alone might not do or would not do in this or that way. I have also found that the more interdisciplinary I go, or that my methods become, and the more they seem to press against borders of knowledge, of practice, of suffering, of exploring. So this is a thorn sign. This is a sign that has disappeared from modern English. And this is how this project Drift started. Can we play the small piece that's connected to it? So Drift started quite casually, from a tiny incident, a stumbling, not even a falling over, yet it jolted me to the core. It threw me into the mysteries of Anglo-Saxon writing, a language and an epoch I knew very little about. An experience of intense disorientation became the edge, the limit against which my knowledges and my life started to push. To come across this sign, this obsolete letter, this runic and Anglo-Saxon sign, the thorn sign, now only active in Irish and Icelandic and unreadable to most others, threw me. It was only readable as an indexical marker, the mark of an ancient or dead language, unreadable to me. The initiatory qualities of tripping, of falling over, became the leitmotif of the project's first piece, Noping. Can we go to the next? And that is the opening page of this piece, Noping, Nothing. This torn letter became a sign of absence and reappearance. I tripped some more over its protruding root. I fell deeper into historic soils, deep nightmarish matter, dreamlike consciousness. Signing off on absence was bringing up all sorts of ghosts. I started to chart a course. Oh, I see. Can we play the first film, North? Basically what I'm doing today, I'm just taking you through some of the materials that I've been using in installations, through prints, audio pieces, and this is one of the longest sections. It lasts for about 40 minutes usually. That is, if you like, the backdrop to the performance when we do the performance with the musician and the visual artist who did this, Thomas Koppel. I started to chart a course through ancient historical Anglo-Saxon material, Irish sea poetry, medieval travel documents, and Viking sagas to make sense of this sign, the thorn. I set to rethink the anonymous 10th century quest poem, The Seafarer. I set out on a journey of my own through nomadic, unmoored contemporary identity and environmental disasters. And inevitably, all this work took place more or less in parallel with the news of an ill-fated crossing of migrants across the Mediterranean Sea political waters, a disaster that came to be known as the Left to Die boat case. This was in April 2011, and this was the first of many now to make international headlines. Developing the various poetic languages of the piece, it was dauntingly clear how these ancient literary journeys were being echoed in the harrowing and unsung, unwillingly documented disasters of contemporary crossings, such as the Left to Die boat case. Distinctions between present, future, and past times were challenged. History functions as a complex time loop. It can dredge up events seemingly wild apart by running them through a very fine sieve. I started devising navigational tools for each of the aspects that were haunting the process, and this became an important task, not to leave anything willfully behind, but to create a structure of work that could inhabit the most distant and the most intimate. In fact, in this project, I came to understand that accepting my own lack of understanding about the fullness of the situation, accepting that I don't know, that I'm lost, is a valid form of committed and obstinate engagement with materials, with ideas, with the times we're in collectively, with the times of my own life, with the larger unmaking and remaking of the stories we're currently living through, and belonging and narrative forms. As Adrienne Rich admonished, poetry can repair no loss, but it defies the space which separates by its continued labor of reassembling what has been scattered, escape loss, but it can piece back together. And then I came across a group of researchers at Goldsmith University who had developed this report that had flagged up, now to international courts, this first, if you like, noticeable disaster of this migrant Left to Die. And this is a group called Forensic Architecture. And because I use them quite a lot in my work, or through this work, I just wanted to quote the way they operate, the way they think, because I think it is really interesting how these social scientists, what they have done with their field and how we, or how I use it in relation to arts practice. So their field work and their findings analysis are interdisciplinary and collaborative. They use human testimonies, on-the-ground interviews, as well as the most contemporary digital modeling and spatial technologies from tools often used by maritime and military forces to reconstruct the events they're examining, as they themselves describe it. Forensic architecture refers to the presentation of spatial analysis within contemporary legal and political forums. The project undertakes research that maps, images, and models sites of violence within the framework of international humanitarian and human rights. This is the main question asked by one of their founders. What happens to the era of witness when a crime is no longer visible to unmediated human perception? What happens when the evidence has been made untraceable? Will the era of scientific model come to replace human testimony in adjudicating humanitarian claim? And I think this is a question that haunts us all. And there's a lot more material. If you look up forensic architecture, they have now disbanded, but they have sort of looked after a great number of projects and brought to light cases we wouldn't have been able to deal with otherwise in court, but also for me in relation to artistic process, thinking through their work. So you could have a look at forensic architecture. You could also have a look at a film that was made by the two researchers that traced up and interviewed the survivors of the Left to Die boat case. If you go to their film, this is Charles Heller, and it's a film called Liquid Traces, which is available online. You can also look at the work of Rob Nixon, which is really extraordinary in relation to his tracing of what he calls slow violence, which is non-spectacular violence. It's called slow violence and the environmentalism of the poor. And it's really the way we fail to notice the type of violences that are being taking place all the time. And how do we then work with those elements when we are engaging ourselves in relation to activism or in relation to a type of engagement that deals with witnessing? For me, the idea of a trans-historic mode of working, which dealt with Anglo-Saxon anonymous quest poems of sailors getting lost at sea, this type of accumulation of the entire text of the work in this way so that you can hardly read it, you've got to piece it together, and then working directly with the report inside the performance was one way by which I was trying to use performance as an active act of recitation, a witnessing, if you like, a reliving. So during the performance, I read the report, and this takes about 10 minutes in the dark, and it's very, very focused and recentering, but very powerful and painful. I just want to read, there was a log that I wrote inside Drift. This whole idea of being lost, not knowing how to work, not knowing how to think, using different types of material to make, not one's case, but to make one's work and not limit the project, to always allow for the project to carry more meat. If it has more to give, how do you follow it? Where do you go to give it more? So this idea of staying lost, of being lost, was really with a lot of this project. And of course, the migrants that got lost at sea, and then the way one loses material and finds it again. So, just very quickly here. Being lost while holding on is simply getting stuck, being stuck as the most lost. I return to the old sailor, but it still keeps me in check. Being lost is a way of inhabiting space by registering what is not familiar, writes Sarah Ahmed, like coming out of orbit, going into freefall, mayday, 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 registering blinding panic or unexpected calm, depending on one's preparedness or willingness to fall. In that same book, she uses the phrase sexual orientation in a literal sense, the sense of orientation, direction, like a compass in a terrain, to spatialize sexuality into directional dynamics. It matters how we arrive at the place we do. I find it helpful, nearly comforting, to think that my current unfocused trajectory is temporary dwelling spaces. My previously mapped out traveling could be seen as many illuminated dots on the way, as though each uprooting, each departure, each arrival does create deep magnetic oscillations across the entire spectrum of traveling and dwelling. The growing reality of collective departures and arrivals or non-arrivals would need to be experienced as pattern formations, generative in a programming sense of the way they affect any port of call. Now, I think I would like to so this continues, goes into gray, and keeps on developing. This is the entire, if you like, textual material that I have researched, developed poetically, and as I said, the report is there. So as the performance keeps on happening, more material gets revealed or gets moved around, but it's created through a number of layers inside the structure. Something that they say, which I think is very interesting, again, for remembering to de-essentialize the materials we work with, always politicize them. In forensic architecture, this particular duo of researchers that dealt with the Lost to Die boat case, they were thinking about the sea, and they're thinking about the sea now as a new sea altogether, because that sea is composed of matter and media. I think that's an interesting point for us. Okay, so let me see if I have, yeah, I think perhaps we can play. This is the second section of the performance, which takes about an hour and a half usually. We made a very short video of a very different way of organizing the textual and the sound material. And we'll play you this short piece now, which is 5 minutes long, called Shake.
Guesses all Adur gangi fram, others go forward. Skudas skyli, skudnas skyli shadows. Witness that vita certain way. What unwise is that Vinny? What each uncertainty? Sitya flatty fyrir sits by fleeting fires, fireflies. Elders are berries of solacine, sooner side. Okay. Sing matter hopes, better alive than unalive. Okay, okay. Not lost at life and with lust for life. Elders are berries of solacine, solar side. Sing matter hopes. Up, up. Room was busy started to That's when I started to squawk, push, sharken, agitate, skarken. That's when I started to shake. Wie uvist aras vita, what unwise varu vini, arat vini, each on wisdom, sitya at fleti firir. That's when I started to shake. Okay. It's shaking stuff. Okay. Let the shaking, when the shaking starts. What's a safe place? What's a safe place? What's a safe place when the shaking shakes? Okay. Shake.
Yeah, we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so we'll wait here a little bit. I just wanted to introduce to you a project which is very different from Drift, but has some of the similar basis of thinking about language, politics, thinking about different layering of discourses or layerings of knowledges, but does so in an extremely different way. In many ways, Drift, with all this historical mass, this contemporary tragedy, it's a death fugue. It's a piece that is played in the dark, very much as you saw some of it here. The piece that I'm working on at the moment is a piece that has been in development for about a couple of years, and we have been now premiering it this early September for the first time, both in Geneva and in London. So we've made a couple of shorter videos of where we are with it. It's a piece called Raggadon. I'm going to play you the first video, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the methods, again, that have been developed for this particular project. So can we play the first one? Thank you.
Oh my love, weeping. If you wake up and you're weeping, weep until you're empty, until you're completely empty. Buzzes, ghostlands, vibrant when my circuits folded rays emit matter, energize. Blue stone, wide-eyed party constellations, liquid lips, vocal circuit, pink thread frequencies, buzzing hands, dust hips, copper belly, matter, energize.
यात्री हैं हम यात्री हैं यात्रा चल अभी यात्री हैं
Passengers we are, 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 passengers we are. Perhaps we can put the next slide. Yeah, that's great, thank you. Okay, so just very quickly wanted to take you through some of the ideas here. I got interested in the nakedness of performance, or this idea of the voice as this archaism, if you like, of the poetic work when it is represented by the voice. And I was invited by a museum in the Geneva Contemporary Museum there to be thinking about a new piece. And I was thinking about the lack of rituals when it comes to marking points in time in secular ways. The fact that we have lost a lot of these songs that used to mark the day. And I became quite interested in trying to think about a morning song or a dawn song, a song that can accompany that ambiguous time between the last hour of the night and the early hours of the morning, or the very first beginning of the morning. The fact that it's a very ambiguous time. We always say celebrate the dawn, oh, it's beautiful, but actually it's also scary, you know. It also throws your life back at you. It brings up anxieties. It's a time where actually there's also a lot of isolation, especially in the urban settings that we live in, or the urban lives that we have. And I was very aware of that, you know, how sometimes you wake up at 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. and things are very scary. People at the moment are sort of also totally disjointed, thrown out of their own lives by all sorts of very powerful and violent circumstances. That means that when you wake up, you know that another day is there that might not go your way. So there's this point where suddenly the refuge of night is disrupted, and you have to face up to things that could be extremely terrifying. So I thought about all those notions, and then I thought that, okay, if we could create a temporary community, if you like, temporary, just go back to the idea of the concert, go back to the idea of the ritual, the archaic moments when we meet, in a ritualized perspective, as a way of addressing in a very sort of discreet and modest way those notions that I've just described now. And so with my collaborator Michel Pralon, with whom I also developed the performance element of Drift, we started working towards this idea of inviting people to join us at dawn. Now, this is quite an enterprise. It's a very fragile piece. As you can see, there's a singer. I was very interested in the idea of song as part of celebrating morning. You have the dawn chorus of birds. So this idea of having a trained singing voice for the first time with my work was interesting to me, also because of what song does to language. It removes language. You know, we often forget language when we are listening to song. I thought that was an interesting dimension. And then me working primarily with repetitions, because again, I was thinking, how does a voice integrate the morning in such a way that the body of the listeners is implicated rather than me telling a lot of different types of stories. So most of the pieces that I developed were based around repetitions. I was also interested, I'm also working with a musician, where Gavin Bryars wrote the song, so some of you know him. Now he's a very interesting composer for solo voice and for voice in general, and he's particularly interested in all sorts of minoritarian languages. He's written a lot for minoritarian old European languages, so he felt like a wonderful choice to work with, and he created all the song elements. So the idea of the structure of repetition that I might be working with is also to be thinking about the breath as the connector, the absolute connector that you have here between the singer, the speaker, the air, the birds, the movements, and the listeners that have made the journey. There's another dimension which is again in full development and was just introduced here, and it's what I call linguistic soils. And you might have heard voices in different languages inside this short video here. Now, I got interested in, again, the way I introduced today's talk with this idea of the one dominant monolingual culture and the sacrifice of all the languages that sort of creates. So I was interested in thinking about ancient European languages or old languages that might be at risk or disappearing, struggling to survive, that need what we now in linguistic terms call revitalization, that might be located in the region where we are performing the piece. So, for example, the Romance-sounding language that you heard at one point is Romansh, which is the fourth national Swiss language, and is not spoken by many people. It's a mountain language. But what is very interesting about that language, when I interviewed the two speakers of this, or three speakers of this language, was the fact that it is being brought back to active life at the moment by Portuguese immigrant communities coming to Switzerland to work, and there is a great connection between the sounds of Portuguese or the language of Portuguese and this old Romansh language. And Romansh is finding itself revitalized by these new communities arriving. So they were talking about that, and they were also engaging in translation activities, which I give them. And the other language was Punjabi, and that was in Essex. That's where we had the performance by the Thames that you could see there in England, because Punjabi is the third language spoken in Britain. All the established communities. Tilbury Docks there is a very important site of landing for a great number of immigrants since the 50s, and just around, just around the if you like the landing stations for the ships. Great Pakistani, Indian, and also Sikh community settled. And so it is the largest Sikh community and Punjabi-speaking community that we have in Britain, and it is located there. And I thought it was, again, interesting to bring up in the memory and in the sound of the morning languages that are not valued, languages that are actively devalued, although they play their part in the economy and also in the educational structures of their own regions. So there's another aspect of this work which I think is interesting to mention, which is the fact of hospitality. When you ask people to come and join you at 5, 6 a.m., this was 7, it was September, but in the summer next year it will be longer. Next year we are hoping to travel up a symbolic route of medieval poetic love songs, starting in Morocco and traveling up all the way up to Norway, following the lengthening sunrise, and then dealing with those, activating these languages. What we had was this idea of when you ask people to join you, you are thinking about a temporary community. They are waking up, coming out in the dark to join us into the performance. So we gave them blankets and we gave them coffee, and at the end of the work, we gave them breakfast. So we shared breakfast. And breakfast is an important part of this work. So we are thinking about the type of foods that are sort of current in the different regions where we are traveling to. So here we had a typical Punjabi breakfast with dal and paratha bread. And in Geneva, we had a sort of rustic bread with new fruit jams. And again, thinking about the sort of the way breakfast is sort of setting up the time of day. Okay, so this sort of, because this work is sort of in the making for me, there's a lot of theory of it or working of it which isn't finalized, which isn't done. However, I'm hoping this will just sort of indicate to you some of the principles, some of the the things about it that are holding me, that are of interest to me. Now, I just want to play the last video, which is going to close my talk. Let me see, did I have... Yes, there is actually another slide I wanted to show, sorry. So themes of waking up or sleeping that also have a lot to do with mental waking and consciousness raising, and those kinds of things are very much part of this work. So the body awakes, the mind awakes, how does it awake? Those kinds of questions. And next slide, please. This is one of the structures that I repeat for about 20 minutes in the work. And next slide. This was one of the quotes that I've been using by the poet Paul Celan. Again, I think something very interesting and important when he talks about the pause for breath as a pause for hope and for thought. So the way we have to take our time, the way we have to stop. And that breath in and of itself, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out, does that, allows for that, demands that. So that where we are situated, all of us culturally, politically, to remember that we do not know how long the pause for breath, which is hope, which is thought, can last. And therefore we have to use that pause. We have to be thinking about breathing in, breathing out, as motors of practice, as materials for practice, as rhythms of living. Yeah? Okay. So I think we can play the final video, please. Actually, before we do that, I'll just start. Passengers we are, passages we are, 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 passengers we are, passengers we are, passages we are, passengers we are, passages we are, passengers 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 we are, passages 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 we are,
By what degree of awareness
passengers we are, passages we
do
are,
I appear
passengers
to
we are,
appear,
passages we are, passengers we are, passages we
or
are,
appear
passengers we are,
to
passages we
disappear?
are, passengers we are, passages we are, passengers we are, passages we are, passengers we are,
By what
passages we
degree
are,
of wakefulness are you here when you're here? Are you sure that you are? Are you lost or losing it? Lifting heavy? Shaking off the shadows that have shaken your resolve? Too fearful to sleep, too scared to wake up? That awake, 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 wake, 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 awake. Awake makes amazed, makes aroused, lays around to the weave of mind waves, heart waves, light waves. Amaze makes a route, clears a path, takes a stand, make a stand from waiting through to waking in the wondrous stir, lightest stir, morphous stir, way.
La chanson la più popolare, la mia bella Val, mia Engiadina, e c'è un po' antiquata, ma minciul la conosce e esprime là sentimenti che si portava con sé all'estero, il famoso l'increscentum della Chiesa e tornava
had a big influence on Punjabi culture as well. So through music they've actually picked up a lot of language, and it's been improvised with East and Western music as well. So that keeps the language flowing as well.
Ensuite, on sent qu'il y a là un chant dans la langue. Par exemple, que j'entendais les chants de la campagne qui chantaient en romanche, Silip, Silip, Silip. Et voici, ça veut dire sauterelle.
Oh, hailing from holy, holy death, love trails, spits and broken glass, aroused crowds, long-standing gatherings, protest fires, unleash plant life patterns of change. Our blistered minds shimmer, our blistered minds shimmer, proudest of voice shimmer, proudest of voice shimmer, proudest of voice shimmer, shimmer, soul skin emergency, soul skin emergency, voice soul skin emergency, voice soul skin emergency, at the source of the purple seated shadow figure, A-E-I-O-U.
Thank you very much. Thank you.